Good morning, church. My name is David, and we are looking at Philippians 3, verses 8 today. Just one verse. Paul writes to the Philippians, and he says, "Yet indeed I also count all things lost for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ." So Paul is talking about the loss of something really specific here. I think I would highly recommend you to read verses 1 through 11 to understand the context of what Paul is saying he's losing here. Because I think he's talking about losing his identity. He's losing the way in which he used to see himself, the way in which he used to value himself, the way in which he used to find himself basically in the world around him, the way he saw who he was, how valuable he was, and how he fit into his society, into his family, his friend group, his religious context. He's lost this old way of finding himself, of seeing himself in the world. And he's gained vision of Christ. He's gained seeing Jesus for who he is. He's lost this old way of seeing himself for the sake of gaining knowledge, the knowing, the understanding, the seeing, the perceiving, the being with Jesus. And he says, this old way of finding myself is so invaluable to me that I actually count it as trash. It's worthless. There is absolutely no value in it. And how does this apply to us? Well, we all have an old way of seeing ourselves as Christians. And for us, it might not be the same as Paul. For Paul, it was very much tied to his obedience to the Mosaic law. So how closely could he obey and fit the mold laid out in the Mosaic law? For us, depending on our background, we might not have had this old way of viewing ourselves like Paul did. You may not have grown up in a Jewish household. But to be sure, if you're a Christian today, you had an old framework in which you used to value yourself, in which you used to make sense of how you fit into the world. And whatever that old way was, for you and for me, and for Paul, one thing that is common to that old way is it depends on us. It depends on our ability. It depends on our performance. It depends on our contributions. And this new way that Paul is pointing to, the way that he says is so valuable that it's worth never looking back at your old way, he's saying this new way, it's going to kill your ego. It's going to kill your pride. It's going to kill the way. It's going to just crucify the old way you used to value yourself, because it's not going to be dependent on you in any way, shape, or form. It's going to be dependent on Christ. It's going to be dependent on what Jesus did. It depends on Jesus's ability, Jesus's performance, Jesus's adherence to the law, to the ultimate law, to the fullness of the law. And church, let's not look back. Let's never look back at that old way of finding ourselves, of making sense of our value, of our worth, in any other frame other than the frame of Jesus's finished work on the cross. Bless you, church. Be encouraged. He is with you. He is for you. He loves you. Rest and see yourself and find yourself in the new way of Jesus Christ. See ya.